didn't grow up thinking I'd ever be in the same sentence as billion-dollar company and Department of Justice. I grew up thinking about rent. My mom was a night shift nurse. My dad drove trucks in and out of the Port of Houston. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like fried onions and diesel, depending on which parent had just come home. I was good at school, bad at sleep. While other kids were sneaking out, I was sneaking my mom's old laptop into bed to teach myself Excel. Not because I loved spreadsheets, because numbers were the only thing that made the world feel less arbitrary. If a plus B always made C, maybe my dad's back problems and my mom's unpaid overtime meant something more than life isn't fair. In our neighborhood, good job with benefits was the dream. The phrase hung in the air like a spell. Get a good job with benefits, and you won't end up like your uncle with no health insurance and a broken hip. Get a good job with benefits, and maybe your mom can stop picking up extra shifts whenever someone calls in sick. For me, that job had a name: Helixson Therapeutics. By the time I finished my Master S in biostatistics at UT Health, Helixson was everywhere in Houston. Her headquarters was a glass and steel statement piece just off the freeway, like a spaceship had landed among the strip malls. They bought naming rights to a minor league stadium, sponsored 5Ks, put billboards over the freeway that said things like HELXON, turning science into second chances. To my parents, Helixson was proof that the city was changing. Big companies coming here, my dad said, watching a TV segment once, means jobs, means you picked the right degree. He wasn't wrong. Helixson had gone from a nimble little research outfit to a $2 billion public company in under 10 years. Business journals called their CEO, Victor Lang, the architect of modern biotech growth. In every glossy photo, he looked engineered for trust. Tall, lean, salt and pepper at the temples, navy suit with no tie, sleeves pushed back just so. He had those CEO hands, always mid-gesture, as if holding an invisible future. He started his career as a scientist, then realized there was more money in steering ships than mixing samples. By the time I applied, he was giving TED-style talks about aligning patient outcomes with shareholder value. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew this: a Helixson badge could change my family's life. I got the job on my second try. First time I applied, right out of grad school, I got the standard rejection email. We have decided to move forward with other candidates whose experience more closely matches our needs at this time. Translated, we want someone who's already done the job we're not willing to train you for. So I did a year at a smaller medical analytics firm, crunching hospital readmission data and pretending I didn't care when Helixson's building lit up at night like a promise. And they posted an opening: data analyst, clinical outcomes and safety. Job summary: work cross-functionally to analyze clinical trial and post-market safety data, identify trends, and support a culture of patient-centric, data-driven decision-making. It sounded like every buzzword I'd ever heard. It also sounded like exactly what I wanted to do. I rewrote my resume, leaned hard on my grad school projects about adverse event modeling. I got the interview. They flew me in for the on-site, even though I lived a 40-minute drive away. That's how you know a company has money. They'll put you in a hotel across town instead of paying you mileage. The campus was even more surreal up close. Glass walls, indoor trees, a cafeteria with a sushi station. My tour guide, an HR rep in a blazer and sneakers, said, "We want you to feel like you can do the best work of your life here." I thought about my mom's cafeteria at the hospital, a row of microwaves and a coffee machine that half worked. I thought, yeah, I could do my best work here. The hiring manager, Erin Kelly, was sharp and tired in the way of people who get things done. She'd been at Helixson 5 years, which I later learned made her practically an elder. Most people either rocketed up or burned out by year 3. "We move fast," she said in the interview. "You comfortable with ambiguity?" "As long as the data's honest, I'm comfortable with whatever," I said. She smiled slightly at that. "We like honest data," she said. "We just have to be smart about how we talk about it." I didn't understand what she meant. Later, that sentence would replay in my mind like a warning I hadn't recognized. At the time, all I heard was, "You're in." My parents cried when I called. Not big, movie-style sobs. Little, quiet ones. My mom covered the receiver and said, "He got it, Kenny." "Helixson," my dad said, "pay off Sally me before you buy any toys." My offer letter said $102,000 a year, plus bonus eligibility, stock options, health insurance, and a $401k match that made my dad whistle when he saw it. "That's more than your mama and me make together," he said, not unproudly. I promised them we'd go to dinner at Papidoc's on my first paycheck. I promised myself I'd be the kind of analyst who made sure the science we sold was real. Orientation at Helixson was like onboarding at a cult with better snacks. They sat 20 of us in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and handed out company-branded notebooks. A video played, all swelling music and slow-motion shots of patients hugging doctors and kids riding bikes. Victor appeared, framed perfectly. "At Helixson," he said on screen, "we believe that doing well and doing good are not opposites. They are the same path." Slide after slide reinforced the message. Patients first. Integrity always. Data-driven decisions. Then legal came in and did their presentation about policies. No matter where you work in corporate America, this part is always the same. Someone in a suit reading bullet points about anti-bribery statutes, harassment policies, and a hotline you can call if you see something that concerns you. At Helixson, they put special emphasis on 2 things. 1, we expect you to speak up if you see potential safety issues. 2, we take retaliation very seriously. It is against our policy and the law. We all signed acknowledgments. I wrote my name carefully. Daniel Cole. Employee ID printed underneath like a new identity. I remember walking out that first day feeling safe, like I'd stepped onto a ship that knew where it was going. I hung my badge in the car and took a picture to send my mom. "Look who's official," I wrote. She responded with rows of prayer hands and heart emojis. My team lived on the 10th floor. Clinical outcomes and safety was a maze of cubicles and glass-walled meeting rooms with names like Watson and Curie. Erin walked me around, introduced me to people whose job titles all started with senior or principal. "This is Victor, our chief of staff," she said at one point, and I flinched before realizing it was not that Victor. Our Victor, the CEO, was on the top floor with the executives and the good coffee machine. We got mid-range coffee and a view of the parking lot. My first weeks were what you'd expect. VPN access, mandatory trainings, learning the internal systems. Helixson had their own pharmacovigilance platform, software, that pulled in every adverse event report from trials, hotlines, and post-market surveillance. My job was to help make sense of that chaos. "Think of us as the early warning system," Erin said. "If a drug starts doing something weird out in the real world, we're supposed to be the ones who notice first." I liked that. I liked the idea that somewhere out there, a patient might be safer because I saw something in a spreadsheet and asked a question. We handled all the company's drugs, but it didn't take long to figure out there was one that mattered more than all the others: Neurodex. Neurodex had its own floor-to-ceiling poster in the lobby. A middle-aged woman sitting on a porch swing, eyes closed, face relaxed. Caption: "For the first time in years, I can just be me." It was approved for treatment-resistant neuropathic pain, which is corporate for when nothing else works and you're desperate. Helixon's sales reps called it the miracle med. Doctors, at least the ones quoted in marketing, called it a breakthrough. Investors called it a rocket ship. In hallway conversations, Neurodex had another name: the lifeline. 40% of Helixon's revenue came from that one drug. That meant we were all working for Neurodex, whether we admitted it or not. You'll spend about half your time on Neurodex and half on everything else combined, Aaron told me. That's just the reality. At first, the data was clean. Every drug has side effects. Neurodex was no exception. People reported dizziness, fatigue, some gastrointestinal issues. Nothing unexpected for a powerful pain med. We had standard warnings in the label. The sales guys had their talking points. Everything lined up. I built dashboards, ran time series analyses, got used to seeing Neurodex in my dreams. Then, about a year in, the pattern shifted. Small at first, like a blip on a heart monitor that only you notice. 3 reports from 3 different community hospitals in Kansas, all within 6 weeks. All flagged as serious adverse event hepatic. Liver, by itself, not shocking. Plenty of medications stress the liver, especially in patients with existing conditions. But I pulled up the cases anyway. 57-year-old woman, no prior liver disease, on Neurodex for 10 months. 48-year-old man, moderate drinking history, started Neurodex 8 months ago. 62-year-old woman, diabetic, Neurodex added to regimen a year before. All presented to ER with abdominal pain, jaundice, elevated liver enzymes. All had Neurodex listed in their med list as a relatively new addition. In 2 of the cases, the local doc had written possible drug-induced liver injury in the notes. I did what I'd been trained to do. I flagged them. In our system, that meant opening an internal safety signal ticket. I wrote, 3 serious hepatic events temporally associated with Neurodex use. Recommend cluster analysis and closer review for potential emerging safety signal. I didn't say, Neurodex is killing people. I said, something's worth looking at. I clicked submit. Little green check mark popped up, received. I went to lunch. 2 days later, I got my first glimpse of how uncomfortable Helixon really was with its own speak-up culture. Aaron pinged me, got a minute. Grab a notebook and meet me in Watson. I brought my coffee and my optimism. Watson was a small glass room overlooking the parking lot. Aaron was already there. So was someone from legal. I recognized him from orientation. Name badge, M. Klein, Associate General Counsel. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Daniel, Aaron said, thanks for coming. We wanted to talk through your recent Neurodex ticket. Sure, I said, sitting. I'm glad you're paying attention, Klein began. It's good to see junior analysts engaged. He said junior like it was a mild diagnosis. But the term safety signal has specific implications, he went on. When we label something like that internally, it can be discoverable in litigation, and regulators may expect certain actions. We need to be precise. I know, I said. That's why I said potential emerging safety signal. It's not a conclusion, just enough to trigger a deeper look. Erin shifted in her chair. To be fair, she said, we usually wait until we've got more cases before calling it even a potential signal. 3 is small. Small, but unusual, I said. All 3 are serious hepatic events. All on Neurodex within roughly a year. 2 with no prior liver issues. It's probably nothing, but isn't this what the early warning system is for? Klein steepled his fingers. Daniel, he said, there's a balance between vigilance and overinterpretation. We don't want to alarm people internally or externally based on noise. Neurodex has been on the market for years. The clinical trials did not show a significant liver signal. Regulators are comfortable with its profile. If we start throwing around language like safety signal in internal documents, plaintiff attorneys could argue we knew of a risk earlier than we actually did. He said plaintiff attorneys, the way some people say cockroaches. So what should I have done? I asked. Exactly what you did, minus the terminology, he said. Flag the cases. Recommend continued monitoring. Leave signal out of it unless, and until senior safety leadership decides to classify it that way. I looked at Erin. You agree? I asked. She held my gaze for half a second too long. I agree that we have processes, she said carefully, and that we follow them. That wasn't an answer, but it was the only one I was going to get. I'll update the ticket, I said. Good man, Klein said, already half standing. The meeting ended with polite nods. I walked back to my desk feeling like I'd just been patted on the head for almost doing something dangerous. I changed the wording. We'll continue to monitor and evaluate potential contributing factors for these hepatic events, I wrote. No signal, just watching. I told myself it was fine, that we'd escalate if the pattern continued. I didn't know yet that in corporate risk calculus, the pattern almost never continues until it's too big to hide. The pattern continued. Didn't care about Helixson's comfort level. Over the next 6 months, the dots spread. Not hundreds. Enough. Midwest, Gulf Coast, Pacific Northwest. Some cases were messy patients on multiple meds, heavy drinkers, complicated histories. Easy to chalk up to multifactorial causes. But some were clean. A 39-year-old man with a herniated disc, no prior liver issues, on Neurodex 9 months, no other new meds. Admitted with liver enzymes in the thousands. 51-year-old teacher, on Neurodex for diabetic neuropathy, liver failure within a year. In more than one chart, an honest local doctor had written some version of suspect Neurodex may be contributing. Recommend discontinuation. We logged these events like we were supposed to. The system did what it was supposed to, clustered them, displayed them, gently lit them up. The humans did what humans are not supposed to. We looked away. Not all of us. In quiet corners, on coffee runs, people muttered, "You seeing those Neurodex livers?" Someone in pharmacovigilance whispered once. "Yeah," I said. "Mentioned it to Erin months ago." "Good luck with that," they said. "You're new. You'll learn." Learn what? That patients first had an asterisk. That a $2 billion valuation weighted the scales. I started to feel something I hadn't felt since college. That hot mix of anger and fear that used to flash up whenever I saw a professor curve grades in a way that punished the kids who worked and rewarded the ones who knew how to negotiate. Except this time, the stakes weren't GPAs. They were livers. Around the same time, Helixson decided we hadn't bought into Neurodex enough. They scheduled an all-hands Neurodex celebration day. They bussed in sales reps and regional managers, put banners in the lobby, T-shirts on every chair in the auditorium, NEURODEX Nation. Victor took the stage to a standing ovation. Behind him, a giant screen showed the Neurodex revenue line up and to the right, like a ski slope for millionaires. 5 years ago, this drug was a risky bet, he said, pacing in that TED Talk way. Now, it's changing lives and fueling our ability to innovate even more. You made that happen. He clicked. The slide changed. Testimonials. Smiling patients talking about how they could finally sleep, walk, cook, dance. A woman said, "Neurodex gave me my life back. I can play with my grandkids again." People clapped. I clapped too. I'm not made of stone. Those stories were true for them. I glanced at Erin. Her face was unreadable. Victor kept going. "There will always be critics," he said. "Always be people who want to tear down what we build. But we know the truth. We have followed the science at every step. We have worked hand in hand with regulators. We have been transparent and rigorous. And we will not let fear stop us from bringing relief to millions." The applause was louder. On the slide, in small print nobody read, I imagined an invisible list of names, not of the people helped, of the ones in our database as serious hepatic. Our job was to see all of them. I wondered who, exactly, our CEO saw. A month later, a local news story forced him to see at least one. I was in my car on the way to work when I heard her name on the radio. "Tonight at 10, the anchor teased. A Houston mother claims a popular pain drug destroyed her liver. Is it safe? Our investigative team asks tough questions." I gripped the steering wheel. There are a lot of pain drugs, but when the segment aired that night, there it was, Neurodex. They showed Carla's husband sitting in a dim living room, photos of his wife on the coffee table. "She never had liver problems," he said. "The only new medicine they put her on was this neuro-something, Neurodex." And then, boom, everything went downhill. Cut to generic footage of pills, hospital beds, a stock image of a liver. Cut to a local ER doctor saying, "We've seen an uptick in unexplained liver injuries in patients taking this medication. I can't say for sure it's the cause, but it deserves closer scrutiny." Cut to a statement from Helixson. "Neurodex has been thoroughly studied in clinical trials and has a well-established safety profile when used as directed. We continuously monitor safety data and work closely with regulators. We encourage patients to speak with their doctors about any concerns." The next morning, my inbox was full. From corporate communications. Reminder: all media inquiries must be directed to communications. Employees should not comment on or speculate about product safety issues. From legal: please be aware that internal documents and communications may be discoverable. Use precise, factual language in any safety analyses. Do not characterize preliminary observations as signals or problems without appropriate committee review. From Erin: come see me when you get in. Watson again. Same glass, same parking lot, different stakes. This time, Erin didn't sugarcoat. "Leadership is spooked," she said. "By the TV piece?" I asked. "By the combination," she said. "TV plus some chatter from FDA plus a few internal things." "What internal things?" She hesitated. "Your tickets," she said finally. She pulled up my Neurodex work. Every flagged hepatic event. Every note. "We're getting pressure to make sure our documentation doesn't outpace our conclusions," she said. "Meaning?" I asked, already knowing. "Meaning they don't want a paper trail that makes it look like we knew there was a problem and did nothing," she said matter-of-factly. "That's exactly what a paper trail is for," I said. "To show what we knew when we knew it." She exhaled. "Look, Daniel," she said, "I like you. You're good. You see patterns some people miss. But you're also still thinking like an academic. You see 3, 5, 10 cases and think, we must act. The company sees 3, 5, 10 cases and thinks, out of how many total? What's the risk benefit? What does the label say? And legal thinks, how will this look in front of a jury in 5 years? And what does safety think? I asked. She gave a humorless smile. Safety thinks about their mortgages, she said quietly. It wasn't cynicism as much as it was exhaustion. She'd been around long enough to see what happened to people who made too much noise. I hadn't, yet. Someone up top thinks you're a little too eager to call things out, she said. Who? I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I already knew who read my report chain. Victor, legal. The people whose job it was to keep Neurodex looking like the miracle drug on the posters. Are you telling me to stop doing my job? I asked. I'm telling you to be smart about how you do it, she said. Flag what you see. Just focus on the data, not the labels. Let the committees decide when something is officially a signal. Don't die on this hill with 3 dots. I left the room with a phrase rattling in my head. Don't die on this hill. The trouble was, it wasn't just a hill. It was a slope, and it was getting steeper. You can fool yourself about a lot of things at work. You can tell yourself the CEO cares. You can tell yourself legal is just being cautious. You can tell yourself we'll escalate if it gets worse. But you can't fool a pattern forever. The pattern didn't care that Victor had given a TED talk. It didn't care that Neurodex paid for the indoor trees. It just kept printing out of our systems in black and white. More serious hepatic events. More flags from ER docs. More quiet, nervous jokes in the break room. Neurodex punch again, someone said once, holding up the cafeteria's neon-colored juice. Careful, might kill your liver. Everyone laughed, a little too loud. Nobody put it in an email. And after Carla's TV story, the outside world started connecting dots we'd been trying not to look at. The FDA sent Hellickson a list of questions. They wanted updated safety data. They wanted to know how we were monitoring serious liver events. They wanted to know if any internal signals had been identified and what we'd done about them. The email about that meeting went out to a handful of people. I wouldn't have seen it, except Aaron forwarded it to me by mistake. Prep latest Neurodex hepatic analyses for Monday's meeting, the VP of Drug Safety had written. Need clean slides for Victor. Focus on risk-benefit, not noise. Clean slides in corporate means slides that make leadership look reasonable. Not noise often means not the bits that might make someone mad. I spent my whole weekend building those slides. One version with everything for the internal safety pre-meeting. One version with key takeaways for Victor. 2 different truths about the same data. In the full deck, I showed number of serious hepatic adverse events over time, geographic clustering, comparison to baseline rates in similar populations, specific case narratives where Neurodex was the only new variable. I used cautious language, emerging patterns suggestive of increased risk in certain subgroups, recommend label change and Dear Doctor letter to communicate updated risk. In the executive deck, I was told to keep 3 charts. Overall Neurodex patient exposure, look how many people it's helping. Rate of serious hepatic events as a percentage of total patients, small. A slide that said, conclusion, continue monitoring, no immediate change to benefit risk profile. Take out the label change recommendation, the VP said in the prep meeting. I stared. Why? I asked. Because we're not there yet, he said. FDA hasn't asked for it. If we volunteer more than they asked, we're just making work for ourselves. And if they come back later and say, why didn't you tell us sooner? I said. He gave me a look that said, you're young, so I'll pretend you didn't say that out loud. Daniel, he said, you're not wrong to be vigilant. But this is how this game is played. They ask, we answer. We don't give them ammunition they didn't request. There was that word again, ammunition. Like safety data was a weapon someone might point at us. Like patients were collateral damage. The Monday FDA meeting was behind closed doors. I wasn't high enough to be in it, but you could feel it in the air. Legal and regulatory people moving faster than usual. Conference rooms blocked out all day. Victor's executive assistant parked outside the main boardroom like a guard dog. Afterward, a memo went out. FDA has requested additional periodic safety updates for Neurodex. Our current assessment remains that the benefit-risk profile is favorable when used as directed. No label changes are planned at this time. Erin forwarded it to our team with a single line. Status quo. Keep monitoring. I wrote back before I could stop myself. At what point does monitoring become ignoring? She didn't respond. Instead, my calendar dinged. 1 Erin plus Daniel Watson 30 min. I had a bad feeling before I even walked in. That feeling got worse when I saw who was already in the room. Erin, HR, and the same legal guy, Klein, 3 smiles, no coffee cups, never a good sign. Daniel, thanks for coming, HR said. Her name was Melissa. We met at orientation. Back then, she'd been all warmth. Now, she had a folder in front of her. That's HR body language for this is not a coaching chat. What's going on? I asked, sitting. Erin looked resigned. She wouldn't meet my eyes. We wanted to talk about your role here and some recent concerns, Melissa began. Concerns, I repeated. She opened the folder. Inside, printouts, my performance reviews, emails I'd written, screenshots of my Neurodex tickets. You're a smart analyst, Daniel, she said. Your technical work is strong. But we've received feedback that you're struggling to align with how we communicate risk as an organization. That I'm, too honest, I said, before I could filter it. Klein's mouth twitched. Nobody is questioning your integrity, he said smoothly. But there is a pattern of you using language that overstates preliminary observations and creates unnecessary internal alarm. Phrases like emerging safety signal in contexts where senior safety leadership has not agreed to that classification. That's my job, I said, heat rising. To flag things, to call them what they look like so we can investigate. And you have done that, Erin said carefully. But after multiple coaching conversations, it seems this may not be the right environment for your approach. Let me be direct, Melissa cut in. Hellickson has decided to end your employment, effective today. The words hung there, like they couldn't possibly be meant for me. I said. We're offering you 8 weeks of severance, continuation of health benefits for 3 months, and a neutral reference, she said, sliding a packet across the table. There's also a standard confidentiality and non-disparagement agreement. I flipped it open, hands suddenly cold. In legalese, it said, I'd agree not to sue Hellickson over my termination. I'd agree not to make any public statements that could reasonably be construed as disparaging. In exchange, they'd pay me to go away. This is because I raised concerns about Neurodex, I said slowly. No, Klein said at once. It is because of a performance and fit issue we've been trying to address over time. You've been counseled about your communication style and your tendency to escalate beyond your role. You fired me 1 month after I raised Neurodex hepatic events again, and 1 week after the FDA started asking questions, I said. That timing is not an accident. Retaliation is against our policy, Melissa said, as if reading from a script. Also against the law, I said. Her eyes flicked to Klein. We're not here to debate legal theories, he said coolly. We're here to effect a separation in a way that is respectful and fair. I strongly encourage you to take a day, review the agreement with counsel if you wish, and consider the package. Litigation is long and uncertain. This way, you get a soft landing, and we all move on. We all move on, like we'd broken up after a bad date, like they weren't severing my income because I'd done the exact thing their training told me to do. Just so I'm clear, I said, my voice shaking now, if I sign this, I'm agreeing not to sue you and not to talk publicly about the concerns I raised. You're agreeing to resolve any disputes quietly and professionally, Klein said. That's all. And if I don't sign, I asked. Then you receive only what's legally required, Melissa said. Final paycheck, accrued PTO. No severance. No reference. And, unspoken, no gag, I looked at Erin. She finally met my eyes. There was something like apology there, and something like fear. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. Sorry wasn't going to pay my rent, but it did tell me one thing: this wasn't about me being wrong. This was about me being inconvenient. Losing a job looks quick from the outside. You have a job, then you don't. Inside, it's slower. I went back to my desk in a daze. HR hovered while I put my things in a box. They took my badge, my laptop, my access card. They walked me out like I was a risk. In a way, I guess I was. Not to my colleagues, to the story, to the idea that Hellickson was a good actor just trying its best. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and stared at the folder. 8 weeks' pay in exchange for my silence. My dad's voice echoed in my head. "Take care of yourself first," he'd say when money was tight. "The company doesn't care about you." He said that about generic bosses, though. The ones who docked his pay if he was 5 minutes late after 12 hours on the road. I told myself Hellickson was different, that they had values. Now, the only value I could see was the number of zeros by Neurodex on Victor's slide. My phone buzzed, a text from my mom. "How's your day going, baby?" I stared at it. I couldn't type. I just got fired for trying to keep people safe. Not yet. Instead, I put the phone down. And I did something that changed everything. I drove not home, but to a strip mall 10 minutes away. To a nondescript office on the 2nd floor. On the door, Santos and Green LLP whistleblower and employment law. I'd Googled them 3 nights earlier. Not because I thought I'd be fired, because some part of me had started to feel the ground under my feet go soft. On their website, they talked about representing employees in healthcare and pharma who'd been retaliated against for raising safety concerns or reporting fraud. There was a contact form. I'd filled it out and hit submit, telling myself they'd never call. They called the next day. "Come in if something happens," the paralegal had said. "Or even if it doesn't, just come talk." So I did. Box of desk stuff in my trunk. Severance packet under my arm. Badge access revoked. Hellickson behind me, glass building glinting in my rearview mirror. The waiting room was small. No kombucha. Just a water cooler and chairs with slightly worn upholstery. The walls had framed newspaper clippings. Whistleblower helps expose $300 Medicare fraud. Insider tips lead to record False Claims Act settlement. Photos of regular-looking people shaking hands with serious-looking lawyers. A woman in business casual came out and introduced herself. "I'm Lena," she said. "Nice to meet you, Daniel. Come on back." We sat in a small conference room. She slid a legal pad in front of me. "Start from the beginning," she said. I told her about Hellickson, about Erin, about Neurodex, about the hepatic events, about the meeting with legal, about the TV story, about the FDA questions, about this morning. I expected her to stop me, to poke holes, to say, "That's not enough." Instead, she kept saying, "What month was that?" and writing down dates. When I finished, she tapped the severance packet. "Do not sign this yet," she said. "Do you understand that this is a lot?" I said. "I mean, they're a $2 billion company." She nodded. "And the Justice Department has taken on companies much bigger than that when the evidence was strong enough," she said. "What evidence?" I asked. She smiled slightly. "That's the next question," she said. Over the next hour, we went from my boss fired me to we might be looking at healthcare fraud. Not because Lena was dramatic, because she was methodical. First, retaliation, she said. Under multiple laws, it's illegal to fire someone for raising concerns about potential safety issues or legal violations. Firing you weeks after you escalated Neurodex liver events and days after FDA questions is, at minimum, suspicious. Second, the underlying conduct. If Hellickson is knowingly downplaying or hiding serious safety issues about a drug while continuing to bill government programs like Medicare and Medicaid, that can be a False Claims Act problem. Same if they're misleading investors about material risks. False Claims Act. I'd heard the term in compliance training. Government can seek treble damages, Lena said, drawing a triangle and writing X3 in the middle. And whistleblowers, called relators, can get a percentage of whatever the government recovers. But that's not why most people file. They file because they can't sleep at night if they don't do something. I thought about Carla, about all the cases I'd read. Sleep hadn't been my friend in months. What would doing something look like? I asked. In simple terms, she said, you'd file a qui tam complaint under seal in federal court. Under seal means secret. Only the government, the court, you, and us know it's been filed. Along with the complaint, you'd give the government a written disclosure of all the material evidence you have, reports, emails, meeting notes. Then the government investigates. That can take years. If they decide to intervene, they essentially take over the case, negotiate or litigate. And if there's a recovery, you get a share. And in the meantime, I asked. In the meantime, you try to live your life, she said gently. She didn't sugarcoat the toll. She'd read the same research I later would, studies showing whistleblowers often face severe anxiety, depression, isolation, financial strain. But you'd also know you didn't just let this go, she added. You'd know that if Neurodex really is hurting people and Hellickson is hiding it, you did your part to stop it. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. Is it crazy to take on something like this? I asked. It would be crazy to do it alone, she said. With experienced counsel and strong evidence, it's hard, not crazy. I thought about the severance packet. 8 weeks of pay and a muzzle. I thought about the Hellickson orientation slide that said retaliation is against the law, while they were literally retaliating. I thought about Victor on stage, talking about second chances, while emailing legal to water down my reports. Okay, I said. What do you need from me? Lena flipped to a clean page on her legal pad. First, we need to know what you have, she said. Anything in your possession, printed reports, personal notes, emails you were CC'd on, screenshots. Second, we need to know what you remember that we can ask the government to go get with subpoenas later. I don't have much, I said, suddenly panicked. They took my laptop, my badge, my email access. Everything's on their servers. That's okay, she said. In False Claims Act cases, it's normal that a lot of the evidence is inside the company. What matters is that you provide a written disclosure of substantially all the material evidence and information you do have and know. The government can compel the rest. Written disclosure, I asked. It's called a disclosure statement, she said. Along with the under seal complaint, you give DOJ and the local U.S. attorney a detailed narrative of what happened and attach whatever you can, emails, slide decks you saved, notes. That's your first chance to convince them this is worth their time. My throat felt dry. I thought about the few things I had outside Hellickson's walls. My original Neurodex, hepatic event ticket draft, before legal made me edit the language. I'd exported a PDF to show Aaron a formatting issue. A couple of email chains forwarded to my personal account so I could finish slide decks at home, including one where Victor complained about overzealous analysts handing ammunition to plaintiffs, lawyers. Notes from meetings with dates, initials, and phrases I'd jotted down because they'd bothered me. I'd always felt vaguely guilty about keeping those, like I was breaking some unspoken corporate rule. Now it felt like I'd left myself a trail out of a burning building. I have some stuff, I said. Good, she said. Don't go back trying to dig for more. You're already out. We'll work with what you have and what you remember. We'll ask the government to secure the rest before it disappears." "What if they've already deleted things?" I asked. "Courts don't love it when companies destroy documents after they know there's a claim coming," she said. "Sometimes that alone can shift the burden against them." She slid another sheet across to me. "Tonight," she said, "go home, scan or photograph everything you have, and write down a timeline. Nothing fancy. Just month, year, what you saw, who was in the room, what they said." "I already have some of that," I admitted. "In a notebook. Dates, phrases." I thought I was going crazy, so I started writing things down. She nodded slowly. "Most whistleblowers I meet do," she said softly. "Not because they're paranoid, but because gaslighting and retaliation make you question your own memory. Documentation is how you fight that." She wasn't wrong. Ever since my first run-in with Klein about safety signals, I'd had this low-level hum in the back of my mind. Write this down. You might need it later. I just hadn't known what later would look like. At night was the first time in months I slept less than my mom. I spread everything on my kitchen table. The PDFs, the printed emails, the notebook. My termination packet sat in the corner like a threat. Every time my mind started to slip into, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe this is just how big companies work, I'd reread one particular email. From Victor to the VP of Safety and Legal. "Neurodex is our lifeline. I don't want every blip turned into a crisis by overzealous analysts. Remind the team that our job is to interpret data responsibly, not hand ammunition to plaintiffs' lawyers." On its own, maybe that's just a CEO being wary. In the context of the data I'd seen, it felt like a thesis statement. We will protect this revenue at all costs, even if it costs livers. I stayed up until 3 a.m., built a rough timeline in a spreadsheet, because that's how my brain works. Month I joined. Month first hepatic cluster appeared. Dates of specific cases, dates of my tickets, dates of meetings with legal, date of Carla's TV story, date FDA questions came in, date of my firing. I added another column, people present, and another, exact phrases I remember. Don't hand ammunition. Focus on risk-benefit, not noise. Label changes could significantly impact market share. Out of how many total patients. Let committees decide when something is officially a signal. Don't die on this hill. Seeing it laid out like that did something to my brain. It turned a foggy dread into a series of decisions humans had made. People at Helixson hadn't just missed something. They'd seen and chosen. See hepatic cases, right arrow soften language. Say, we'll monitor. Right arrow push Neurodex harder, reassure investors. Fire the guy who kept using the word signal. It looked less like a misunderstanding and more like a scheme. The kind of thing false claims act cases are built around. Over the next 2 months, whistleblowing became my unpaid second job. By day, I scrambled to find temp data gigs to keep my bank account from bleeding out. By night, I worked with Lena and her team to turn my mess of notes into something the Justice Department could understand. We drafted the complaint. United States ex-rel. Daniel Cole v. Helixson Therapeutics, Inc. Even reading my own name in that format made my stomach flip. Ex-rel is Latin shorthand. It basically means on behalf of. I wasn't just suing for myself. I was saying, on behalf of the United States, I believe this company defrauded you. We alleged that Helixson knowingly failed to timely and adequately report serious safety information about Neurodex to regulators, continued to promote and bill for Neurodex while downplaying or hiding emerging hepatic risks, submitted or caused the submission of false claims to federal healthcare programs that wouldn't have paid if they'd known the truth. Alongside the complaint, we We prepared the disclosure statement. Dozens of pages. It felt like writing my own indictment of a place I'd once been proud to work for. I described the specific hepatic cases that first tripped my alarms. Internal meetings where safety concerns were minimized. The 2-version slide deck trick. Exact emails from Victor and legal about not creating ammunition. The timeline leading up to my firing. We attached exhibits. We redacted patient identifiers. We checked and rechecked dates. Then, one quiet Monday, Lena filed the complaint under seal in federal court. A courier carried the disclosure statement to the U.S. Attorney's Office and DOJ. Nothing outside changed. Hellickson didn't know yet. My parents didn't know. My friends didn't know. On paper, I was just another guy who'd lost his job and was struggling to land a new one. Inside, I had just lit a fuse. The thing nobody prepares you for about whistleblowing is how much of it is waiting. Movies show the dramatic parts. FBI raids, courtroom showdowns, CEOs sweating on the stand. They don't show the days where nothing happens except your brain gnawing on itself. False Claims Act gives the government an initial 60 days to decide whether to intervene in a qui tam case. But in practice, they ask the court for extension after extension while they investigate. My case stayed under seal for nearly 3 years. That meant Hellickson was quietly served and had to hold onto relevant documents, but they couldn't tell employees about the specifics. I was legally prohibited from talking publicly about the lawsuit. Life, on the surface, had to go on. Underneath, it did not feel like life. It felt like treading water with weights on my ankles. Research backs this up. Studies comparing whistleblowers to control groups show significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, insomnia, and even PTSD symptoms among whistleblowers, often lasting years. I didn't need a study to tell me that. I lived it. I woke up at 3 a.m. thinking I'd hear footsteps on my apartment stairs. I jumped every time my phone rang from an unknown number. I had dreams where Victor was standing over my bed saying, "You misunderstood everything," and I'd wake up sweating, half believing him. Isolation crept in. Friends from Hellickson stopped answering texts. Not all of them. The few who did were careful. "We miss you, man, but things are weird here." Lots of closed-door meetings. HR told us not to talk about the Neurodex story with anyone outside. One person wrote, "Just be careful. They're pissed." I didn't know if they knew about the sealed complaint or were just reacting to my firing. Either way, the message was the same. "You're radioactive." My therapist, because of course I got one, told me something that stuck. "Your nervous system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do in a threat environment," she said. "Hypervigilance, insomnia, racing thoughts, that's your body trying to protect you. The problem is, this is a marathon, not a sprint. You need ways to dial down without pretending nothing is happening." Easier said than done. Every time I tried to forget about Hellickson for a week, Lena would call. "DOJ wants a clarification on this email chain. Can you remember if the March 18 meeting was before or after the FDA call? Do you have any sense of how often safety met without legal in the room?" Each question reminded me I was still in it. Still standing on a line between 2 versions of myself. Daniel, the ex-employee trying to get back on his feet, and Daniel, relator, whose name was on a sealed case in a federal court database. The government's investigation was, by design, invisible to me. They didn't send status updates. They didn't invite me into their strategy sessions. Most of the time, all we heard was, "They're still looking." Still looking at what? We could make educated guesses. Based on how FCA investigations typically work in healthcare, they were probably subpoenaing Hellickson's internal safety committee minutes and emails, comparing our allegations to adverse event data submitted to FDA, interviewing former employees quietly, talking to doctors who prescribed Neurodex, and reviewing billing records to see how much government money had been spent on it. I imagined some DOJ lawyer reading my disclosure statement late at night, then flipping through a stack of Helixin slides and saying, "Holy," or worse, saying, "This is thin, we've seen worse." That was my bigger fear. Not that they'd find nothing, that they'd find enough, but decide it wasn't worth the fight. DOJ actually does that sometimes, moves to dismiss FCA cases they think lack sufficient merit or would be too costly to pursue, even after investigating. I tried not to think about that, but on bad days, it felt like a second guillotine hovering just out of frame. Meanwhile, the world kept turning. Helixin's stock dipped after Carla's story, then recovered. Victor did more interviews. "Our commitment to safety is unwavering," he told a friendly business reporter. "We monitor all of our products rigorously and work hand in hand with regulators." Neurodex kept appearing on ads, kept showing up on doctors' sample shelves. Patients kept taking it. Some got better. Some ended up in the same spreadsheets I used to comb through. I had to compartmentalize. If I let myself fully feel the weight of every potential liver failure that might have been avoidable, I would have collapsed. My therapist would remind me, "You are not the only line between this company and the world," she'd say. "You did what you could within. You're doing what you can without. The rest is not something any one person can carry." Lena would echo it in lawyer speak. "You've given DOJ a roadmap and enough fuel to drive it," she'd say. "Whether they take the trip is their call." That's how the system works. It's a strange thing, trusting an abstract system with something this personal. Trusting that behind some anonymous email address usity.gov, there were actual human beings who cared enough to keep going. The first hint that they did came in an email subject line nearly 3 years after we filed. DOJ request, meeting with relator. I stared at it like it might disappear. Lena forwarded it with, "This is big. Call me." When we got on the phone, her usually measured voice had a spark. "They want to meet with you in person," she said. "This means they've dug into the documents and have more questions. It's not a guarantee they'll intervene, but it's a very good sign." The meeting was in a bland conference room at the U.S. Attorney's office. No flags in the corner, no fancy seal, just a long table, a pitcher of water, and 3 people in business attire with badges clipped to their belts. They introduced themselves: an assistant U.S. attorney, a DOJ civil frauds lawyer, an analyst from HHS OIG. They didn't waste time on small talk. "We've reviewed your disclosure and Helixin's productions," the AUSA said. "We want to walk through the timeline in your own words and then ask some specific follow-ups." For 2 hours, I relived Helixin. They asked about the first time I saw a Neurodex hepatic events cluster, exact phrases used by Klein and the VP in safety meetings, how slide decks were altered between internal and executive versions. Victor's involvement. Was he on emails in the room giving direction? What happened after the FDA's initial inquiries? They didn't say, "We believe you," or "We're going to crush them." They said things like, "Help me understand how widely that view was shared in safety." Was this slide shown to the full committee or just legal and the VP? If we subpoena Erin, do you think she'd corroborate that? At the end, the civil frauds lawyer said, "We appreciate you coming in. Cases like this are hard. We know retaliation is real and the mental toll is significant. We can't promise an outcome," the AUSA added, "but we can promise we take this seriously." Walking out of that building, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not victory, not relief, just validation. Someone with actual power had looked at the thing that cost me my job and said, "This is worth our time." The DOJ meeting didn't come with a soundtrack. No dramatic gavel. No, we're taking them down. Just 3 serious people in a bland room, asking precise questions and taking better notes than I ever had. Lena and I walked out into the Texas sun, squinting. "Well?" I asked in the parking lot. She smiled faintly. "In my experience, when civil frauds lawyers and AUSAs clear half a day to hear a relator out, they're not doing it for their health," she said. "That's not a yes," I said. "It's not a no either," she said. With GSK, they investigated for years before announcing that $3 billion settlement for failure to report safety data and other fraud. These things move slow until they don't. Slow turned out to be another year. The email Lena forwarded a year later had no fanfare. "DOJ has filed its complaint in intervention," the subject line said. Inside, 2 sentences. "They are intervening in significant portions of your False Claims Act case. The court is unsealing the matter. Expect media." I opened the DOJ press release when it went live. HELIXON Therapeutics to pay $1.4 billion to resolve allegations of failing to report safety data and causing false claims for NEURODEX, the headline read. My heart hammered as I scrolled. It laid everything out in clinical, devastating prose. Helixon had failed to timely and adequately report certain serious neurodex, related hepatic adverse events, to the Food and Drug Administration. Continued to promote and bill for neurodex, while aware of emerging safety information that made prior representations incomplete and misleading, caused the submission of false claims to federal healthcare programs for neurodex prescriptions that would not have been paid had the government known the full risk profile. There were quotes from the Assistant Attorney General: "Companies that put profits over patients by hiding safety risks will be held accountable." Today's resolution shows our commitment to protecting both public health and taxpayer dollars. From the HHS OIG official, drug manufacturers have an obligation to promptly report safety data. When they fail, patients can be harmed and federal programs can be defrauded. Buried in the middle was a sentence I read 3 times. The settlement also resolves claims brought by a former Helixon employee under the quitam provisions of the False Claims Act. The whistleblower will receive approximately $39.8 million as his share of the recovery. Former Helixon employee. That was me. My name was in the last paragraph. Daniel Cole, a former data analyst in Helixon's clinical outcomes department, will receive. My phone lit up like a slot machine. Texts from unknown numbers. "Dude, is this you?" with a screenshot of the article. Calls from reporters. "Mr. Cole, we'd love to get your reaction. I did one TV interview on the local station that had first aired Carla's story. They put me in a chair under hot lights. The reporter said, 'You took on a $2 billion company and helped the government secure a $1.4 billion settlement. Do you feel like you destroyed Helixon?' I thought about it. About how their stock had tanked 60% on the news. About Victor announcing his resignation to spend more time with family. About layoffs and restructuring memos that started leaking online. No, I said. I think Helixon destroyed itself when it decided it could hide safety data and retaliate against people who raised concerns. I just refused to be quiet about it. On paper, Helixon survived. Companies that pay massive FCA settlements often do. GlaxoSmithKline is still around after paying $3 billion for fraud and failure to report safety data, with $2 billion of that under the False Claims Act. Hellickson signed a corporate integrity agreement, promised to beef up compliance, agreed to independent monitoring, pledged to reform their safety reporting. Neurodex got a black box warning for liver toxicity. Sales plummeted. Investors fled. Victor stepped down. He didn't go to prison. He negotiated his exit, as CEOs do. But his visionary reputation took a hit you can't PR away. Every time his name appears in a Google search now, it sits next to words like False Claims Act, safety data failures, and $1.4 billion settlement. Inside the company, friends who still talk to me said the mood after the announcement was like a funeral. People in safety walked around shell-shocked. Some were angry at leadership. Some were angry at me, as if I'd conjured the facts instead of documenting them. That's one of the psychological weirdnesses of whistleblowing people write about. Colleagues often resent the person who exposed the rot more than the people who created it. You become a mirror they don't want to look into. As for the money, you can't talk about a nearly $40 million award without people assuming that's why you did it. The False Claims Act exists, in part, because Congress realized you need a serious incentive for insiders to risk their careers to expose fraud. Settlements like the GSK $2 billion civil portion, or others in the hundreds of millions, have produced whistleblower shares in the tens of millions. My share changed my life. It wiped out my debts, bought my parents a house, paid for therapy I should have started years earlier. It also came with survivor's guilt, because while I was signing documents to receive my cut, there were people who'd taken Neurodex and been harmed. People like Carla's husband. Studies and first-person accounts from other whistleblowers talk about this mix: relief and guilt, vindication and isolation. The payout doesn't erase the years of insomnia, the job rejections, the friends lost, the feeling of being the crazy one until a government press release proves you were. It doesn't erase the fact that a CEO looked at my work and saw threat instead of help. If all you want is money, there are easier crimes than telling the truth. The question I still get the most from people who DM me articles or corner me at conferences is, was it worth it? I think about that when I read about new False Claims Act cases, about DOJ intervening against other pharma companies for hiding safety problems or ignoring red flags while billing federal programs. I think about it when I see op-eds arguing the FCA is too harsh on big companies that make honest mistakes, right next to press releases where those same companies admit to systematic misconduct. And I think about it when I open my inbox and see messages like, I work at a device manufacturer and I'm seeing them bury adverse events. I'm terrified to say anything. Or, my hospital bills Medicare for things we didn't do. Your story made me call a lawyer. Research is clear. Whistleblowers as a group take serious hits to their mental health and careers. Many end up divorced. Many never work in their industry again. If that's the only story you tell, nobody will ever speak up. But there's another part of the story. Systems only change when someone inside says, no. When someone is willing to be the first crack. For Hellickson, I was that crack. I'm not a hero. I'm a data nerd from a port city whose dad's back still hurts when it rains. I got a good job with benefits. Watched a CEO try to trade patient safety for another lineup and to the right. I raised my hand. He destroyed my life as he saw it, my position, my prospects, my place in his system. So I stepped outside the system, and with a lot of help from laws written long before I was born, from prosecutors I'll never fully know, and from a few emails he really should have thought twice before sending, I helped take down his to-be company's lie. I wish I'd never had to. Sometimes. In a better world, doing your job in drug safety wouldn't require a qui-tam suit and 3 years of anxiety. In this world, corporate greed backfired. They made an example out of me to scare others. Instead, they created a plaintiff the government could not ignore. If you're where I was, staring at a pattern that keeps you up at night, know this. You are not crazy for seeing what you see. You are not alone in the toll it takes. And sometimes, the thing they do to break you is the thing that breaks them. The CEO destroyed my life, so I took down his 2B company. And if it kept even a handful of people from waking up in a hospital bed wondering why their liver failed, I can live with that trade.